the whispering violin. In the remote village of Shadowmoor, nestled deep within a valley surrounded by towering snow-capped mountains, the people lived simple, quiet lives. The village, isolated from the outside world by the rugged terrain, had its share of superstitions and old tales, passed down through generations. One such tale was that of the whispering violin, an instrument of haunting beauty and malevolent power. The villagers spoke of it in hushed tones, warning of the curse that clung to its strings. Strings said to have been soaked in the tears of a lover scorned and betrayed. Esme was a girl with music in her soul. From a young age, she had been captivated by melodies and harmonies, finding solace in the notes that floated through her mind. She had taught herself to play the old violin her father had left behind, spending hours each day practicing in the quiet of her room, the music a balm for her restless spirit. But the violin she played was old and worn, its sound thin and reedy, and Esme often dreamed of finding an instrument worthy of her love for music. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Esme wandered through the outskirts of the village, she stumbled upon an old, abandoned church. The building was crumbling, its stone walls covered in ivy, its roof sagging under the weight of years. Curiosity piqued. Esme pushed open the heavy wooden door, the hinges creaking in protest, and stepped inside. The interior of the church was dark and cold, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and decay. But as Esme's eyes adjusted to the dim light, she noticed something gleaming in the shadows near the altar. Her heart quickened as she approached, her footsteps echoing in the silence. There, lying on a dusty pew, was a violin unlike any she had ever seen. The violin was exquisite, its wood dark and polished to a rich, deep luster. The strings, though old, seemed to hum with a faint, almost imperceptible melody, as if they were alive with the echoes of forgotten songs. Esme reached out to touch it, her fingers trembling with excitement. The moment her hand brushed the wood, a shiver ran down her spine, and she felt a strange, almost magnetic pull toward the instrument. Unable to resist, Esme picked up the violin, the weight of it comforting in her hands. She could feel the music within it, waiting to be released, and she knew she had to play it. Without a second thought, she carried the violin home, her heart pounding with anticipation. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and the village was bathed in twilight, Esme sat by her window, the whispering violin cradled in her lap. She drew the bow across the strings, and the instrument sprang to life, its voice rich and resonant, filling the room with a haunting melody. The music was unlike anything Esme had ever played before, each note infused with a depth of emotion that seemed to reach into her very soul. As Esme played, she began to notice something strange. The violin's whispers, once faint and distant, grew louder, more insistent. At first, she couldn't make out the words, but as the music swelled, the whispers became clearer, revealing the darkest secrets of those who listened. The villagers, drawn by the sound of the violin, gathered outside Esme's window, their faces pale in the fading light. They stood in silence, mesmerized by the music, unaware of the danger that lurked within the notes. But as the whispers grew louder, the atmosphere in the village began to change. The violin spoke of hidden affairs, of lies and betrayals, of long-buried grudges and unspoken resentments. The secrets were twisted and cruel, turning friends against each other, lovers into enemies. The villagers, their minds filled with the venomous whispers, began to argue and fight, the bonds that had held them together unraveling before Esme's eyes. Esme watched in horror as the village descended into chaos, the music still flowing from her fingers. Even as she tried to stop, the violin had taken hold of her, its whispers filling her mind, drowning out her own thoughts. She tried to put the instrument down, but it was as if her hands were no longer her own, the bow moving across the strings with a life of its own. The violin's voice grew darker, more malevolent, and Esme felt a cold dread settle over her. The whispers told her of the violin's origin, a tale of a lover betrayed, of a heart broken beyond repair. The violin had been cursed by the scorned lover, its strings soaked in the tears of the broken-hearted. It fed on the misery it created, growing stronger with each note, each secret revealed. Desperate to break free of the violin's grip, Esme tried to destroy it. She threw it to the ground, but the instrument did not shatter. Instead, it lay there, humming with dark energy, the whispers growing louder, more frenzied. The villagers, driven mad by the secrets they had heard, began to turn on each other, their eyes wild with anger and fear. Esme realized too late the true nature of the violin. It was not just an instrument, it was a weapon, a tool of destruction designed to tear apart the fabric of the village. The violin would not allow her to stop playing, its curse binding her to the music, to the darkness it spread. As the final note rang out, the violin's whispers reached a crescendo, filling Esme's mind with a cacophony of voices. Her vision blurred, her strength drained, and she felt her body collapse to the floor, the violin still clutched in her hands. The whispers faded into silence, and the village was left in ruins, the people broken and scattered, their lives forever altered by the secrets they had heard. When the villagers finally returned to Esme's house, they found her lifeless body, the whispering violin lying beside her. The instrument was silent, its strings still, its curse complete. The villagers, fearful of the violin's power, buried it deep within the earth, hoping to seal away its darkness. But the whispering violin was not so easily silenced. It lay dormant, waiting for the next musician to find it, to pick it up and play its cursed melody. The legend of the whispering violin lived on, a tale of sorrow and betrayal, a warning to those who would seek to uncover the secrets hidden within the music. And in the quiet of the night, when the wind howled through the mountains, some swore they could still hear the faint strains of a violin, whispering in the darkness, waiting for the next soul to fall under its spell. The Shadow in the Attic. In the small, sleepy town of Eldermore, there stood an old house on the outskirts, its once grand facade now weathered and worn by time. The townspeople spoke of it in hushed tones, a relic of the past that held secrets better left undisturbed. For generations, the house had been passed down through the same family, each new owner sealing off the attic, a room that was rumored to be haunted by a shadowy figure. It was said that the shadow was the restless spirit of a man who had died in the house under mysterious circumstances, his soul twisted and bound to the attic, emerging only at night to roam the dark, empty space. The house had been vacant for years when Emily's family moved in, drawn by the property's charm and the allure of its history. Emily, a girl with an insatiable curiosity and a fascination with all things supernatural, was thrilled by the prospect of living in a house with a haunted attic. She had always been drawn to ghost stories, devouring books on the paranormal, and dreaming of the day when she might encounter a ghost of her own. Her parents, however, were more practical, dismissing the stories as nothing more than local folklore. They set about making the house their own, restoring the rooms to their former glory, while Emily explored every nook and cranny, eager to uncover its secrets. But there was one place she had not yet ventured: the attic, the room that no one dared to enter. The attic door was located at the end of a narrow winding staircase, hidden behind a dusty curtain that fluttered in the slightest breeze. The door itself was old and splintered, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust, as if it hadn't been touched in years. Emily had seen the door many times in passing, but something about it made her hesitate, a sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of her curiosity. One evening, when her parents were out attending a local event, Emily found herself alone in the house. The sun had set, casting long shadows across the floors, and the wind howled softly through the trees outside. The house creaked and groaned, the sound of its age settling into the night. Emily stood at the bottom of the staircase, her heart racing as she stared up at the attic door. She had always dismissed the stories about the attic as silly superstitions, but now, with the house silent and empty, those tales seemed to take on a new weight. Her flashlight in hand, Emily took a deep breath and began to climb the stairs, each step creaking loudly beneath her feet. The attic door loomed before her, its wooden surface rough and cold to the touch. She hesitated for a moment, her hand trembling as she reached for the tarnished brass handle. The door resisted at first, as if reluctant to open, but then it gave way with a loud creak that echoed through the house, sending a shiver down her spine. The air in the attic was colder than the rest of the house, the chill seeping into her bones as she stepped inside. The room was dark, the only light coming from her flashlight, which cast a weak yellow beam that barely penetrated the shadows. The attic was filled with forgotten relics of the past, old trunks and furniture covered in cobwebs, stacks of dusty books, and piles of moth-eaten clothes. Everything was draped in a thick layer of dust, untouched for what seemed like decades. As Emily moved deeper into the attic, her flashlight flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. The air was thick with the smell of decay, a musty, earthy scent that made her stomach churn. She shone the light around the room, her heart pounding in her chest as she searched for any sign of the shadowy figure the villagers had spoken of. At first, there was nothing, just the silent, oppressive darkness pressing in on her from all sides. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw it, a shape darker than the shadows around it, moving in the far corner of the room. It was barely visible, an inky black mass that seemed to pulse and shift with a life of its own. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the shadow moved closer, its form growing larger and more defined. It wasn't a trick of the light. This was something real, something malevolent. The shadow seemed to be drawn to her, moving silently across the floor, its edges blurring and shifting like smoke. Her flashlight flickered again, the beam weakening as the shadow loomed before her, a formless, seething mass of darkness. The air grew colder, the smell of decay stronger, and Emily felt a wave of dread wash over her. She tried to step back, to turn and flee, but her feet wouldn't move. It was as if the shadow had rooted her to the spot, its presence suffocating, its cold tendrils wrapping around her like icy fingers. The shadow moved closer still, and Emily's flashlight flickered one last time before it went out, plunging the room into complete darkness. She could feel the shadow pressing against her, its cold, dark tendrils wrapping around her body, pulling her into the black void. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Only the cold, empty darkness filled her senses, drowning her in its embrace. The last thing Emily saw before the darkness claimed her was a pair of hollow, empty eyes, staring at her from within the shadow, as if the figure itself was nothing but a void, a vessel of darkness and despair. The next morning, when her parents returned home, they found the house silent and empty. The attic door was closed once more, the dust undisturbed, as if no one had entered. They called for Emily, searched every room, but she was nowhere to be found. The house stood still, its secrets locked away in the shadows of the attic. The villagers whispered that the shadow had claimed another soul, that Emily had joined the restless spirit that haunted the attic, her fate sealed by her own curiosity. The house remained as it always had, its attic door closed and forgotten, waiting for the next curious soul to open it and release the shadow from its dark prison. The Witch's Mask. In a town known for its elaborate Halloween celebrations, there's a particular tradition that everyone follows: a mask contest. Every year, the townspeople craft intricate masks, each one more horrifying than the last, to wear during the Halloween festivities. But there's one mask that is never worn, a mask locked away in the town's museum, said to have belonged to a powerful witch who once cursed the town. Avery, an artist with a fascination for the macabre, is determined to win this year's mask contest. She's heard the stories about the witch's mask, a grotesque creation made of human bone and animal hide, with a face twisted into a permanent sneer. The legend goes that the witch crafted the mask herself, infusing it with dark magic. And anyone who wears it will gain unimaginable power at the cost of their soul. Despite the warnings, Avery decides to steal the mask from the museum, believing that it will give her the edge she needs to win the contest. Late one night, she breaks into the museum and finds the mask displayed in a glass case, its hollow eyes seeming to stare back at her. With trembling hands, she lifts the mask from its stand, feeling an odd warmth emanating from the cold material. As Avery places the mask on her face, she feels a surge of power unlike anything she's ever experienced. Her vision sharpens, and she can hear the faint whispers of the spirits that dwell within the mask. She rushes home, eager to finish her costume and prepare for the contest. But as she works, she begins to notice strange things happening. Her reflection in the mirror looks different. Her eyes darker, her skin paler, her expression more sinister. The mask, once so beautiful in its grotesque detail, now seems to be merging with her skin, the edges disappearing as if becoming part of her face. Avery tries to remove the mask, but it won't budge, its grip on her tightening with every attempt. On the night of the contest, Avery arrives at the town square, the mask now fully fused with her face. The townspeople gasp in horror at her appearance, but Avery feels nothing but exhilaration. She steps onto the stage, ready to claim her victory. But as the clock strikes midnight, the mask begins to change. The twisted sneer on the mask's face becomes Avery's own, her eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The whispers in her head grow louder, drowning out all other thoughts as the mask's true power takes hold. The spirits of the witch's victims, trapped within the mask for centuries, now possess Avery, using her body as a vessel to exact their revenge. Avery's body contorts and twists, her hands clawing at the air as the spirits force her to enact the witch's final curse. The townspeople scream as they feel an invisible force tightening around their throats, choking the life from them one by one. The mask, now fully alive, feeds on their fear and pain, growing stronger with every soul it consumes. By dawn, the town is silent, its streets littered with the bodies of the dead. The mask lies on the ground, its features now serene and lifeless, waiting for the next foolish soul to don it. The museum was left untouched, but the mask is never returned, its dark legacy continuing to haunt the town for generations to come.